I potentially could, sorry, I could potentially show a presentation that I'm preparing for Astronomy Day, a bit of a sneak peek and unprepared, unfinished one, but on imaging Saturn.
Oh, I'm really interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Um, we'll see how it all fits.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Sharing is not turned on.
should be. Oh, I guess I left and there we go. Is that better?
All right, yeah. All right. I
Oh,
imaged
oh,
the Iris
Oh, wow, that's
Nebula
nice.
last week. This was 3 hours of exposure time out at Cattle Point. I used GHS for the first time, uh, which I think helped a lot. I don't know. I don't know. I struggled with this. I think it's partially because I don't have enough. It's just there's some weird artifacts in it, and it looks fine when you're not zoomed in.
I like the
uh,
That
cloud.
looks good.
I love
yeah,
the cloud
It,
it
around.
took me a few different attempts to get the final result that I wanted messing around with GHS, but it was my first time using it, so
Yeah, it takes a while to use. Um, the best thing to do at first is sort of weekly stretch your image and then use GHS to adjust it.
yeah, I stretched it just enough till I got the kind of the center where I wanted it and the field stars, and then I took the stars out and I masked out the center for most of it, and then I stretched the centers a little bit more separately and bumped up the saturation a lot.
Righto.
But yeah,
That's
very nice.
gorgeous.
overall I was happy with it. I liked
Yeah,
all the
looks really good.
dust.
Especially with 3 hours. That's not a lot of time.
Yeah. By the time it gets to like 2:30, I'm tired and I want to
Yeah.
go home.
Well, we'll have to get you robotified.
Yeah. I should need a place to put a robot. A robot telescope.
So, Brock,
Yeah. I only have one picture, but I could share I could share the picture that I have. It's just a moment here. I got 28 hours of exposure time on the coma cluster. Can you guys see that okay?
oh,
Yeah, that looks great.
that's a lot of galaxies.
It's a lot of galaxies. Yeah. I'd been meaning to do this. I hadn't done the coma cluster yet. And partly because everything's so small and well, it's not small, but it's very distant and angularly small. And so, but it's always kind of been tempting just because there's so many galaxies in there, and it's just this endless sea of. And there's a few that actually you can see some detail in there, but it just blows my mind every time I look at it.
That's wild.
And there's these two ellipticals, and I don't know if they're in the foreground. They just seem so big comparatively. I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody knows, but
It looks like you got a nice tidal tail coming off the right one, arcing up and over to
oh yeah,
the right. It
yeah,
between compression, I can see it.
yeah. There's something there. Yeah,
Lovely.
but yeah, I think this year I'm going to focus more on just putting like lots of exposure. Like previous years, I've been sort of snap happy. It's like, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this and then a picture of that, and you end up getting 8 hours on this and 5 hours on that. And this, I think I might spend a bit more time and try to saturate, put 4 or 5 nights on things. And
Great. Ted, you got anything recent?
I have been rebuilding the observatory, so all of my good nights have been spent trying to get K-stars and Ecos working properly,
Oh,
Nice.
yeah.
which I have more of that tonight. So consequently, there isn't a lot, but it's going well. I'm
Good.
can't say. Well, I'm extremely happy with it so far. So it's but we haven't gotten to the point where I could do any sort of acquisition stuff, uh, but things like the plate solving and all that, I mean, it's slick. I've never had a program that could do a plate solve from cold in 3 seconds. It's
Wow.
just amazingly fast.
Yeah.
So that's going to have a big impact on my scheduling. And so sorry, no images to report. I've got old stuff, but when you want something new, there's not much there. I've never shared anything on this before.
Oh, here's your chance.
Well, let me figure out how to do it here before I divert anybody's attention.
And how about you, Ken? Are you able to? I guess it's difficult for you to show anything.
I don't know. I really don't have much, but I partway through one I could show, I think. If I can figure out this iPhone. Share. Photo. Oh, God. Why do they keep on changing these things around? Maybe I'll
Well, you're only on 6. Wait till you get to, I think they're up to 13 now.
Well, actually it's a 15. Am I sharing it all?
No.
We can see you though.
Yeah. Oh, that's not fair. I'm going to cancel the share and I'm going to bow out.
Okay.
So to share something, you click the green share button.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then you've got to click something again, either the screen you want to share or
Yeah, okay. I have 2 screens, so that's makes it complicated here. I'll give it a shot and see if I can make it work.
well, it's actually makes it easier if you put what you want to show on screen number 2,
Yeah.
and you can select screen number 2 when you share.
Mhm.
Let's see if this works.
That works.
Works great.
Very nice.
So that's the rosette, obviously, and that's narrowband and using the Hubble palette.
Mhm.
And I just happened, this one I just tweaked a little bit recently because I've got a print made of it now to give to my youngest son for his birthday coming up. And he's has a mild interest in astronomy, but more importantly, he has children. And so there's a good opportunity to contaminate them so that they can see something that looks nice. Being a corrupter of youth from many years ago. This isn't a lot of data, 7.5 hours. The subs were 15-minute subs that I used. And actually, it was my very first attempt at doing narrowband. And I
Turned out well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
really
blown
good.
away how well it worked. I've just recently gone back. I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago or a couple of meetings ago that I was reprocessing all this old data using the new AI tools and stuff.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did with this. So this is an example of that kind of reprocessing. One thing I really liked about is particularly doing the star extraction and then processing and then putting it back in again was the great control you have over the color of the stars,
Mhm.
which, as you know, a narrow band is a pain in the ass. And so the stars are basically white in this with small amounts of color. But I think it looks good. It doesn't take anything away from the image.
Nice.
And, you know, it's sort of indication of the refractor that I built, which for a while I was really not very happy, but realized it wasn't the instrument or my sight, it was me. I wasn't processing things very well. And so now I've got this data that I'm just working through. And eventually, when I get the new automated system up and running, I'm looking forward to getting a lot more.
Did
It's
you start
Yeah, it's
from
really
scratch
fun.
again back and like reprocess from the beginning, or did you?
Yeah, I quite literally went back to the raw data
Hmm,
and redid everything
nice.
and made I probably didn't need to go that far back to do it, but I thought I might as well. And I was a little bit more picky about the subs that I used. Mind you, I've been getting really good results with this setup, so I've got no complaints. You know, my camera's an older camera. It's an SBIG 8300. Um, but damn, that thing CCT is still perfect. There's barely a hot pixel on it. I'm really amazed how well it stood up over the years. So I'm still able to crank out stuff like that. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Cool.
Quantum efficiency isn't great, you know, compared to the CMOS ones, but you know, I can live with that. It means my exposures are a bit longer, maybe, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I printed this thing off. Actually, that's a good question. Is anybody got any recommendations for good print labs to use in town? Anybody do much of that?
I I've only had London Drugs print out something for me,
Yeah,
and I got it on what they call metal paper,
yeah.
and it was fantastic. I
Hmm.
had to wait a week or something for it, or
Hmm,
maybe longer, but I can't remember now. But had several days anyways. I had to wait for it, but it came back fantastic.
Hmm. Well, this
And
the
I've only used
image.
London drugs as well, but they generally do okay. A few different types of photos, and it all came out pretty close.
Yeah, I've used London Drugs as well, and been reasonably satisfied with the results. But what I decided to do for this image was to actually go to a color lab. In fact, the name of the outfit is the Print Lab, and they've been around for a while, but I'd never dipped a toe into that world, so it was a new experience with them. I was a little put off at first because I phoned them up and I said, "What format should I send this?" Expecting it to be TIFF or something. Oh, send us a JPEG. No, I don't want everything reduced to 8 bits. What's your printer running at? So they're used to dealing with ordinary photographs, and the printer that they have runs at a full 16-bit depth, and so you're throwing that all away. So
No, JPEGs are 16-bit. It's just
are they?
yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
they're compressed. They do compress,
Yeah.
but you
Okay.
can
That's where
set but you can set
yes.
that to no compression if you want.
Yeah. So anyway, to make a long story short, I convinced them to take a TIFF, and you know, one of the problems I ran into was if you use PixInsight to generate a TIFF, and you don't tell it explicitly not to do it, it makes a floating point TIFF, and the lab can't read that. They need it to be integer. And so after some toing and froing to get this all right, they were just flabbergasted by this image and by the quality that came out of it. So I think they sort of learned a little bit about working with these images as well. And I do have a version of this that was printed from London Drugs, and the one they did just blows it out of the water.
hmm.
I mean, it looks like it's supposed to on the monitor, what I got from the lab. And the London Drugs ones were close, but never exactly the same. So, and I put that down to using color calibration and working with somebody who's, you know, color calibrated printers and all the rest of it. But that was my first experience dipping a toe in that. So, I did it was 18 by something or the other, this image, and mounted, ready to hang on the wall, framed, cost me $120. And when you consider the cost of framing, yeah, it's just crazy. So as far as I could see, if I want to mount something, professionally, I'm perfectly happy to go to them because the whole job gets done. One-stop shopping. And
Well, let me know if they do aluminum printing.
they do.
Do they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They
That's something I'm interested in.
well, if you Google them, you'll see all the different materials they have. They must have a dozen or more different ways they can print it for you.
Yeah.
And I think the metallic. With this one, I went to a pebbly finish, and the reason for that was they thought that one would stand up to children the best.
Oh yeah.
All right, and so that was a consideration, and it looks really good, but I think I agree with you, Dave. I think the metallic stuff would look a lot better. It just has that saturation to it.
Yeah, reflection from that it makes the stars glow and the nebulosity glow, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to do another print run, another image that I've done, and I'm going to do it that way because it's an image of the Pleiades, which has lots and lots of the nebulosity in it, and of course it's blue, and so with the metallic finish to it and the blue, I think it would look pretty spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
So that's my next effort in the whole thing. So anyway, as I say, I have nothing new, but I've been reprocessing like mad, so coming up with stuff. So how do you unshare?
There should be a button on your screen to unshare somewhere. Should be
Near the top.
It says new share, you are sharing.
It might be on your #1 screen.
See what happens if I click. Nope. All right. Well, that didn't do anything. Oh no, I've stolen you. Suppose I could just get rid of it.
Well, you have to unshare.
Mhm.
It's usually a red button at the very top of the screen.
And leave the meeting. Would that be helpful?
Here, I'll steal it from you, Ted.
Okay.
Okay.
Please do.
Can you steal, Dan?
Yeah, I just notified him to pass it over to me. Did you see it pop up?
Oh, there it is. I found a stop share.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. Sorry about that.
Oh, should I share? I got 2 images.
For sure.
Yeah.
Be good to see him.
And it kind of leads into my demo there. Second. There we go. Oh, doesn't know which screen is which. I can just do this. Anyone see that?
Oh yeah, beautiful.
There's my California nebula. So this one's going to be the subject of the demo. I really like the way this turned out because it's showing a lot of the turbulence in the cloud. And it also shows the blue on the one side. There's actually a star at the bottom of the page lighting this thing up. But it's actually a section of the second image I want to show, which is a more subdued palette, but also of the Rosette
Ah,
Nebula.
Beautiful.
Thought I'd share these.
That's crazily detailed.
Pardon me?
Crazy details.
Yeah. Well, that's why Gary asked me to give a little demo. And if you're ready for it, I will bring it on over. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
So I'll try and go through it real quick here. But what I'm going to skip is all the beginning stuff. So all the stuff that happens when you're dealing with maybe RGB images, but everything that happens when it's linear, I have skipped. And I always think of all that stuff that you do at the beginning as working on the data. So it's correcting for your telescope optics, it's getting rid of background, it's massaging the actual data to make it better, stacking images. That's all has to do with the data. And that gives your final linear images. And that's basically the starting point that I'm going to go from here. Um, so everything you do from here has to do with making us see the data better. So it has to do with the limitations of the monitor, that's the limitations with your eyes and your perception of that information by your brain. So it really, I really think of that distinction. This part, which is making you be able to see it better, is doesn't have anything to do with the data. It has to do with us visualizing that data. And I think it's the fun part. But to be quick, here I've got my sulfur data, my oxygen data, and my hydrogen alpha data. It's just nothing's been done to it. I just took the stars out. I did do deconvolution, which is a way of fixing the data, and I did take the stars out. For this images, I used RGB stars, so I have an RGB image. But I haven't done any noise reduction or anything on any of these things. I didn't even do background extraction because I looked at it and it didn't seem to need it. But the first thing I would do, and I do that all on the individual narrowband images to this point, where I quickly go and create an SHO image. And this isn't an image I'm actually, you'll see, I'm not actually going to use this. Let me stretch it. And I just stretch it with all the channels linked. And I quickly open up GHS, and all the data is on the left-hand side. And I'm going to be using GHS partly as a stretching tool, but partly to look at the histogram, because I'm always going back to the histogram to see where my data exists. And that's the key to not letting your data get blown out. Once you blow out your data, once it hits one, there's no going back from that stage. So just about everything I do is about not blowing out my data, but trying to get the detail. And I'll just deal quickly with color here, but this also has to do with a loom channel that I'm trying to create. I see that all my 3 channels, make sure you look at the log histogram too when you're using GHS, It's very important because I can see there is absolutely no data out here. If you're doing it linear, there might be data along here that's too small to see, but if you go to log, you actually see where the data exists because it exaggerates a little bit of data so you can actually see it. But I just go, there's a number of ways to do this. The easiest way is to select, say, the blue channel here. And what I want to do is just adjust the white point so that it kind of lines up with the red channel. So that left-hand side lines up. And I can execute that. And then I can switch over to the green and adjust the white point again so that it lines up. I think I'll line it up right there. And essentially, what that's done, I didn't even show a preview to do that. It's balanced the colors in a sort of in the background. So it's made sure that all the colors have the same background to them. Because immediately what I do after this is I extract a luminance that I'm going to use to get all my detail. So that's the luminance of that channel once I've got the signals balanced. And then I also separate the color channels. So I know I'm dealing with image 58, red, green, and blue. I do remember that's S, H, and O, and the luminance is the luminance. So then I work on these two things totally separately with different goals to get my final images. The luminance is where the details go, and the colors is where the colors go. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do how I put the colors together, so I'll just go to the luminance. Now, this is a stretch of that same luminance channel with GHS, but one of the key points when you're stretching, whether you use GHS, I can also recommend the SETI Astro statistical stretch, but you'll have to follow that up with a GHS stretch. Let me take that and I'll do a statistical stretch on it. Now the default for the statistical stretch is 0.25. I would make that 0.15. I'm not exactly sure what this curves boost is used, but I might a little bit in it. You can use the preview by preview what you're going to do, but I'll just execute that. And I'll show you what the statistical stretch gives me. Even at 0.15, if I, oh, let me get rid of this now. You see, it really almost saturates the brightest pixels. It actually doesn't, which is a good thing. But it almost does. So before you can actually use this, I would do kind of what I did before. You can do it on a linear. There's a way I do it with actual GHS with a high B and stuff like that. But I want that peak brightness. You can see what I preview. I don't want that peak brightness to go above about 0.75 to 0.8. I want everything back here because when I'm getting the details, it's going to brighten up some of the pixels. And if I left it in the original spot, it would only get um, it would only get um, blown out at a later stage. So you'll see I'll go through a process. I'll go into GHS, stretch this back a little. And I'll show you another way to do that, stretching back in a second, but I'll do it this way here. And I've dimmed the image now. So then I would go to in getting, so this is the L image. I think I'll start back with the GHS. Oh, maybe I'll continue on with this guy. I'll continue on with this guy. What the heck? And wait till I make a mistake. The first thing I go to is to the HDMRT function, which uses wavelets to balance essentially the magnitudes of the various components of the wavelet to bring contrast, and it kind of dims the brightest things, but it's quite involved, and I will always suggest using a preview, and I'll show you why in a second. So I've created a preview here that's essentially the same size as the image. Now, you can do a different technique if you got a lot of galaxies, like in Brock's images, you can make previews around various sizes of galaxies, and then there's a script that lets you substitute in the preview into the original image. But I'll demonstrate that another day. But the first process we're going to be looking at is HDR multi-scale transform. Now, when I've got an image such as this, where there's nebulosity everywhere, the answer for this number of layers I want to use is anywhere from 6 to 9. But the beauty of using a preview like that is, oh, make sure you click this to intensity and lightness mask. Don't use the medium transform. I always get better results, even if I leave it as a spline. But then I just apply that to the preview to see what it does to the image. So I think you can see that it has worked in bringing out some detail there right off the bat. And if I go to undo the preview. Oh, I did it to the image. Sorry. What I wanted to do is do it to the preview. Did it undo that? Yeah. So the main thing to change first off the bat is this number of layers up here. And what you want to do is find out if you use too many layers. I'm going to use 9 and redo that preview. I can just put it on my preview and it'll start from the beginning again. You see, it gives a quite different result. Now you can play with this until it gives you the result that you need. And maybe I should play around. Maybe 8's a good one. eight's maybe a really good one there. But just play with that number until you're happy. Generally, the smaller the object, the smaller this number of layers you want to do. The other thing you might want to give a shout to is these small scale and Gaussian. Usually I pick one or two scales that are one or two numbers above this 8. So maybe we'll use there is no 10, so maybe I'll use Gaussian 11 as the scaling function. It'll change the image a little bit. On little mice. So maybe I'm happy with that. I think it was better before. And then when I'm happy, I sort of take that away and doing it on my image this time instead of just a preview. Now you can step back and take a look at it and say, well, is it too harsh what I've done? If it is too harsh, I might want to average it back in with the original image. But I think you can see I'm creating some more detail in here. But as usual, I pull up GHS now on this image, and you see how my histogram has crept up. So I might want to push that back down towards 0.75 again for the next process I want to do. I showed you how to do that by changing the white point in linear, but the other thing I sometimes do is I just crank up that B factor all the way because I want it to curve a lot. And I put the symmetry point all at 1. And then when I start stretching, I push the whole curve to the left. And then I use LP to push it back again till I'm about that 0.75 mark. This stops me from over dimming. This method stops me from over dimming the dim parts here. So I'll just apply that. Oh, it's very easy. So I'll move forward with that. So that's one of the key things I use to bring out detail in this image. Then I go to the next process is local histogram equalization. Sometimes I use this, sometimes I don't. You really have to be careful about it. This one has, get rid of that now. This one has a preview to it, and sometimes it gives a look to your image that it almost looks a little bit plastic. So there's before and there's after. I don't like that effect. One thing I try and do is I start with a high kernel radius at first. Maybe I crank this up, this contrast limit for that high radius. And you can see it's really darkening the darkening. It's putting a lot of contrast in the image, but it looks terrible. So you fix that by using a very small amount. So you can see what that's doing to the image. It is adding contrast in it, but not so much that it looks totally fake. Now this does take a minute to run, So I will run this one, but I will skip the smaller kernels, but at the smaller kernels, you have to make the contrast limit smaller, and the amount should be smaller too. But once again, if I open up GHS, I'll find I have bright.
And then smaller one afterwards. That correct?
Pardon me?
Correct.
I think my internet is breaking up a bit.
The large kernel first and smaller. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. You're doing the large kernel first and small kernel second. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is that just the way you found it works the best? Because I've been doing it the other way, and I'm curious about this.
I think I did it once the other way and once this way, and I got a better result. So it's hardly a study.
Okay.
And you know, the way I do things is always evolving a little bit. Here we see some creep. If I did some smaller kernels, you can see lots of nice sinusoids coming up in here. But I really want to keep an eye on that thing there. So I'll just do this again. Oh, put this up there. And then I can do this. And then I can do this. Perfect. So I hope you see there's detail coming out. The next process I tend to use is this multi-scale linear transform. Now, there's a bunch of ways of, I'll call this LHE. And I'll make a new clone of that. And this is really sharpening. So you really want a lot of layers. So I just bring it down here. And I know on this scale, usually like you have to play around with this preview. And maybe 0.05. And what I'm doing is I'm adding that bias here. And what I want to do is create a peak. But what this bias is it's a sort of an additional weighting that layer is being given to the overall image. So as I hope you all are aware that an image can be represented by a whole bunch of sinusoidal waves of different frequencies. And each of those contributes to the overall, each of these waves contributes to the overall brightness of any pixel that's on an image. And you can actually have a little bit of fun. And I suggest that you
Can you say hello?
I'm on a Zoom call.
I hope you spend some time, open up this multi-scale linear transform, and you can actually turn layers off. And you can see what happens if I turn off the finest sinusoids in the image. I work my way up. You can see it getting blurrier and blurrier, right? And so roughly you want to add some bias. If you switch them off and you start switching them on again, you want to add some bias to the where you start to see the details come out, because those details are what you're trying to capture, and those are the wavelengths that these are increasing wavelengths. This wave is 4 pixels wide. This is 2 pixels. This is 1 pixel. This is 8 pixels wide. It's these wavelengths that you want to add some sort of emphasis to bring out sharpness. So here was without the sharpening, and here is with the sharpening. So I think you can see that I'm starting to really bring out a lot of the detail in this luminance. So we can say I'm ready there. Okay, that's done. And you kind of go, okay, well, I've done quite a bit of sharpening here. I think I've got a better luminance than I started out with. You might then go to GHS. Again, it's still important that that's not too bad. You might want to adjust this somehow. You might want to, maybe there's a bit of a hump there. Maybe you'll try and relieve that hump a little bit. It's a little unpreview. So I've just adjusted the contrast with GHS a little bit there. Trying to take that hump out. And then I say, okay, now I'm good to go. I want to do it again. Or do I? Maybe I do want to do it again. I'll do it again. Anyways, so that's my final luminance that I'm going to put in the image. It's still noisy. If yours is quite noisy, you might want to do a noise exterminator. Hopefully you follow how to get all of that. And then I go and work on the color. I've got a little bit of time to show you how I do the color too. No?
Mhm.
I'm not finished the detail yet, but the rest of the detail I'll get to when I actually put the color together. So where did I find that? Go back here. Go back here with the images I got you. So I'm going to minimize that and throw that in the panel for later. I'm going to get rid of these. Now, recall, this is the RGB that I extracted from that color image. I'm going to make Oops, not that. I'm actually going to make an HOO image out of that. Now, this is a technique that I got from, I can't remember his name. Has that pay-per-view YouTube. Adam Block. But it's quite interesting. You go back and make an HOO image. And you can see it's really dominated by red because that hydrogen is very dominant, and the oxygen was very weak. That's sulfur, it's red. But you remember how green the image is. That's hydrogen alpha. So that's why this image is so red. And just for time's sake, I'm going to do SETI Astros statistical stretch and move this down to 0.15. It's cute. Take his word for it that it's going to work. So I'm just getting a stretch into this thing, but I do know that I have to see how the red part is going all the way to 1 here. So I really can't do that. So I'm just going to go to the linear method and increase the white point till I've pushed it back to about 0.85. And then I'm going to do this other script, which is the narrowband normalization script that some of you have used. I think you've used it, Ken, you, on an HOO image.
Yes.
So it just says it's an HOO image. Now there's 3 modes you can use. Sometimes I've used mode 1, which makes what these modes are doing is they're calculating an artificial green, and that green is a combination of the H and the O. The blue O is left alone, but that gives hydrogen an orangey gold sort of color. And I've done it both ways, both mode 1 and mode 2. In mode 2, it kind of leaves the hydrogen as a red signal. Now, I suggest you try it. Sometimes images work. My original image I did with mode 1, the image I showed you. So I'm actually curious myself to see how mode 2 works. Mode 3 is orange again, but now I'm getting magenta down here, and I don't really like that. So we're going to try mode 2 this time. So oxygen is blue and hydrogen's red in this color. So I'm just going to execute that. I don't want to do it again. And that's an HOO image. Then I still have to add my sulfur, which was this image 58 red. So I'm just going to quickly stretch that again using the statistical stretch. 1.5 here. And you. And then, because my original image was red and blue, I'm going to try and make this sulfur that yellow color. And to do that, I just have to colorize this. I don't think it's a process. Narrowband color, what narrowband color macro? I don't want to do it. So, oh, I've already done this. Clear this. So I want to add a layer. I want to select that red view image 58 red. Is that the one I've been using? Why have I got an image 67? Anyways. I want to turn this color wheel to yellow. You can see now it's made a yellow version of that. I'm going to turn the saturation up here. So it makes it quite yellow. And update that layer. So all I've done is turned my sulfur data into a yellow image, making it go from monochrome to an RGB that shows up as yellow. And that's good enough. And I just say execute. That now. I don't know what this is, but I gave him 2. Anyways, they look the same. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to now go to image blend, which is a fantastic utility you need to get. I think you need to get it. But I'm going to take as my first image my RGB, my HOO image, which was image 58 something. Oh, was that image 67? See in a second. Yes, it was image 67. And this new NCB image 2. And I want to color blend them. Is that right? Oh, that's an awful green, isn't it? It's not color. Just screen. I don't remember how I did this. There, screen. That's what it is. Now I can go in and change the brightness of each of these layers. So if I want the red to be brighter, I can bring this down. I can bring this up a little bit. Until I get the overall right sort of result that I'm happy with. Okay. Now you see it's getting very noisy. It's getting very color noisy. It's getting a whole bunch of things. But if I'm happy with the result, It's really the color that I'm after, remember. SHO. Now, as you might be aware that I'm trying to avoid doing noise reduction throughout here. But I've brightened up the background a little bit too much. So let's just do a quick GHS on that, and we'll see if we need to. Well, I can see immediately I've gone way over that level that I was at before. So I'm going to do one of these. But I'm happy that I haven't actually saturated anything to this stage. So I do probably want to bring that up to about there and check a preview to make sure it's looking pretty good. So that's great. So I'm going to execute that. So now I have my color image. You can go into, I can improve this by going into curves. And normally if I had more time, I would do little curves here too. And maybe some adjustment with GHS, some fine adjustment. But now if I go into, let me make sure I got the names of my, let's bring that and put it with here. So now I'm going to go to process, script, utilities, image blend this time. It's the same one as I used before, except now I'm going to load my SHO starless. As SHO S-less. Yeah, utilities, image blend. Oh, I looked wrong on that. Oh, maybe I was stretching it more. Doesn't look like it. Oh, because it's still blending it with the other image. Sorry, I just had a brain fart here. This one is called Image 58. Blah blah clone. The blend mode. This time I want lightness. So what I'm telling is I want this black and white image, this monochrome image, just to give the lightness to the overall image. And I think you'll see that I'm actually now bringing both the color and a lot of detail into view here. Although I had to do something about the saturations and stuff. Because I skipped the curves part. But anyways, so now this makes it LSHO S-less. So I could have got the colors better. This is the first time I added the yellow to the red. I think I got a better result when I made the sulfur red and used the other mode when I put them together. But I think you'll see I've added quite a bit of detail into what's going on within the clouds. You can see a lot of the turbulence going on. So I am going to go to curves just for a second here to show you how I do that. And it's probably best if I had done it earlier on. I still haven't done any noise reduction, you may notice, but I do want to add some blue back into this image. Oh, let's see the preview. There, got some blue back in. Bring out some red more. And then some saturation. And maybe even some vibrance. Could easily overdo that. That's better. Still not liking this. I'd like this to be bluer, but you got to go back sometimes and work these things out. But there's just a couple last things I do want to show you. Again, it's a trick with this image blend. And usually this works out, and it usually works out really good. You could do this in Photoshop, but all I do is I take that starless image and I blend it with itself. And this has got to go to image blend. Screen. So I screen it with itself. That makes it a lot brighter, right? I might tone that down a little bit. Oh, sorry, I got it the wrong way. Remember, shifting that slider in Pix Insight makes it darker. But that adds quite a bit of brightness to it. But it also brings out what's going on in the background quite well. So I'll just, very simple thing to do. We'll call this LH. That's the list. Double board. And say good, but the real nifty thing happens next. If I take this double blend with the original SHO, blend this again, and I change this to soft light, it will darken it again. But this is that Orton glow effect. Have you heard of that Orton glow that you can add? This is what this is doing. I can make it a little bit brighter even. But now it's almost coming to life. To me, it looks like it's coming to life for me. the other thing you can play with, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, is this second image. You can blur if you like. And that it kind of gives a, as if you're imaging it with you're taking a headshot of a model. You know how they get rid of the wrinkles and stuff on a model's skin by making it slightly blurry. Well, you can do that sort of effect too. But usually I get happy with that. And so I'm going to say, I'll call this Orton, although the Orton glow comes from a little bit of blur, but I'm choosing not to. I don't like blurry images. But it really brings a lot of color depth and contrast, I think, within the image. Now I can see hopefully I'm not blowing this out, so it's time to go back to our GHS, and I've done it. I've blown it out. I made it too bright, but so I failed. But shouldn't be too much. I can see how much I can repair this. You see, there is no getting rid of those few pixels that want to stay right at 1. But maybe I can get away with it. Let me push this back. Yeah, you quite see this little bit here. I've overdone it just a tad. And then I can go about I would, if I was processing this, I'd take a step back. When I was doing that image blending, I probably went too bright at one stage. So I just try and get rid of that orange, but there you can see it there as my shame. And there's a little bit right there too, and a little bit right there. Hate that. But the last thing you can do is for sharpness is unsharp mask. Now you can see how that adds a little bit of final sharpness to the image. And then I'm out of tools to sharpen the image. I'll exaggerate that a little bit. Yeah, I think that adds a fair bit. You can see these wisps coming off here, and you can see some crosses. Maybe I've overdone it a little bit here on the detail. But of course, the last thing you're going to want to do, and I'm just going to run. Did I execute that? I don't even know if I executed that. Yes, I did. The last thing you want to do is bring it all back with the noise exterminator, which if you haven't updated your noise exterminator, you haven't got it, it's fantastic. It is just super amazing. You can do color noise and frequency noise separately, and find what the transition from one noise level. Sometimes if you get blotches, you can get rid of just the blotches, even if the fine scale is fine. And even if you don't have blotches and you just want to get a fine scale noise, you can do that. If the noise is all in the color, you can do that. I'm just going to run it plain Jane. So you can see the noise that's in the image now. And if I run that like that, should get rid of most of it. You can preview too if that's helpful. This should just take a second. Come on, little mouse, run on that wheel. It's always nice to see this thing work. Does take a minute though. And this is the accelerated that Dan helped me get going. So
You're
this
making that poor 3090 sweat.
it's not a 3090. You see how that noise cleared up real nice? There's a few blotches. I think that might be stars. And so that's how you can turn you know how you can get a lot of the data. It's all tricking your eyes. It's data that's there that you're exaggerating so that your eyes can see it. This is all that is. Right? You're not making stuff up. You can get artifacts like these over blotching that I did. Well, that's the story. So I've given a bunch of tools. I don't necessarily use them all on every image, but you really can get the most out of your data visually if you use some of those tools. Those are the tools I use, and that's my story. Hopefully that was helpful.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dave. I was definitely adding a lot of PixInsight tools to the repository as we were going along.
Yeah, you notice most of what I use, some of what I use is original PixInsight stuff, but a lot of what I'm using is just what people have added on. And most of it's free. The noise exterminator isn't. So how do I get rid of stop share? I wonder if I can save that. Maybe I should. But some of the things are in Photoshop. Some of the things aren't in Photoshop, which is why I don't really use Photoshop. But all that blending is all can be done easily in Photoshop. Some of the sharpening can be done in Photoshop. Some of the wavelet tools aren't there. The curve stuff is. And there's wavelet tools in Cyril too, isn't there, Brock?
There are, yeah.
Okay.
Similar, sort of, they're similarly executed to how they work in Redshift stacks. So if you do planetary, it's a similar thing where you do a wavelet decomposition and then you can slide the different scaled waves and blend which ones pick up the best detail.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have a story too, Brock? You'd like to?
Well, it's almost 9, so maybe I'll save it for the astronomy day stuff.
Well, I apologize for going over.
No worries. It was a last minute
No,
suggestion.
it was very interesting, Dave.
Yeah, it's great.
One question. Do you have a written out workflow for how you go about this?
I did it one time, but it keeps evolving on me.
Yeah, I kind of got lost in the various manipulations of the narrowband, you know, the HOO and which file you were putting this in, and you know,
Yeah,
it's a little hard to follow. I think I understand what you did, but I'm not absolutely sure.
yeah. Well, the ability to blend images, like I've always struggled with SHO palette, right?
Right.
Getting the green.
Yeah.
And so all this technique really is creating an HOO palette with the formulas that people have come up with already to make your HOO avoid the green
Right.
and avoid the white too.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to see too much white. And then you just take the third color, the sulfur color, and you make it a color that's not green as well. So either red or yellow, depending on how you represented the hydrogen. And then you put them together and you get that nice gold to gold through orange to red sort of look on that side.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this. I mean, one of the things I've been messing about with is adding hydrogen alpha to my RGB images. And the general result in that is everything's too damn red. And so I kind of think there's some way to take what you're saying and apply that, but I got to do some thinking about
Oh,
this.
for galaxies you're talking about?
Yeah, galaxies and some extended objects as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I do it I do that what do they call it? Subtraction, the continuum subtraction method.
oh, okay.
Slightly modified version of that, which I can that works for me spectacularly.
Oh, okay.
Um, and allows you a little play, like you can play a little bit with how much red you add in.
Well, that's what I need to do. Yeah, I've been so continuum extraction. All right.
Continuum subtraction.
Subtraction.
Sub,
Okay.
subtraction, yes.
Yeah, I've got lots of RGB stuff and quite a bit of hydrogen alpha on many objects, and well, as you know, I've been data mining recently. So,
Yeah.
and I'm finding I've got some stuff where I've managed to put together over 20 hours worth of data that was collected over some period, and the results have been very good, much to my surprise. So I'm kind of still doing that until I get the new operating system up and running and everything out there. But
As for the stars in nebulous, I either take RGB, you don't need many of them to get the stars.
yeah,
Or if I'm stuck, I only use HOO images. I don't use sulfur in the stars. I
right.
just use HOO. And then I trick the system by telling it I'm doing a spectrographic color calibration to it. And I
Oh,
tell the program I'm using RGB stars when I'm not really, I'm using HOO stars.
I've
right.
done that exact thing for HOO stars.
Yeah. And it works pretty good. It works
Yeah.
pretty
Okay. All right. Yep.
So
Well, much to think about. Thank you for the presentation.
yeah, it was great. Thanks, Dave.
Get my
Yeah,
tiny little
thanks.
mind going here.
So
Well,
very quick,
it's officially dark outside now, and I have to do a polar alignment. So I think I'm going to beg off
Okay.
and,
Okay.
and do some real work. So anyway, nice to chat. We'll see you
Okay.
next week or
Thanks
next
a
time.
lot. Has anyone else got anything?
yeah, just a couple quick ones. The first light of that tack. So this is a single sub. My guiding wasn't perfect. I had some flexure coming off the piggyback refractor, but that's what happens when you don't run your off-axis guider through the main tube.
Mhm.
That being said, it's about as clean of a image train as I've seen in terms of the stars. And I did a quick mosaic one here where you can just, doesn't really matter where you look. They're all about the same. And that's the edge of the full frame. So that all went,
Fantastic.
that went
Mhm.
great. This is what I'm used to. when I use HOO filters. This is my ASCAR. And you can kind of see it out here, but you really see it if you flip between the channels, where
Yeah.
one of your channels will look like that, where the other two are tight.
Mhm.
And the nice thing with
But
TAC,
you calibrated that?
that one I hadn't calibrated. I
Oh,
leave my
okay.
calibrated frames when I'm done. With the TAC, like when you look out at the same kind of,
That's not bad for uncalibrated frames.
you get no real drift on this guy. So it's asking a lot to do 3 nanometer in 5 minutes. And with an uncooled RA, it was really pushing it, but it came out pretty well. So
Yeah.
these are the
I already
outputs.
lifted those for astronomy day, Dan.
What do you mean?
Well,
So the thing that I liked about this is that it didn't really matter where I was looking in the frame. Like there's this little guy hanging out over here. There's good detail all the way down. Like none of it really gets lost as you move through the processing, where a lot of the background stuff that you can usually pick out using the plasket or something bigger, held up pretty close to the atmospheric limits for a lot of the frame. And I mean, this is only, I think like the cut line is somewhere like here for the luminance data that I added from the SIG, but it didn't really do anything. The only piece that you see that's a little bit different is if you really stretch this thing wide out, you can see where the cut line is, and you can see that because of the data moving on this side, the satellite or the rejection of satellites and other things just didn't work as well over here. But aside from that, like you're still getting about the same level of depth outside of the overlap zone as you were within it.
Which
And
scope is this again, Dan?
I picked up back in the fall when they had that sale, I picked up a TOA 130.
Hmm.
And it has the 645 flattener, which they released a few years back, about 2 years ago, which is supposed to correct down to 5 microns out to a 60 millimeter image circle, and I think it's 3 for a 43 millimeter circle, which basically means that for a full frame camera, like even Dave's cameras are only 3.76 nanometers or something for the pixels.
Right.
so did you
So
get that from Brandon?
Astronomy Plus.
Astronomy Plus.
Yeah, they're pretty good to work with.
Yeah. They're
And
North
then
American, right?
because the moon, they're out of Montreal.
Oh, okay.
And then because the moon was coming up, I had to swap targets halfway through the night, so I picked one that I was familiar with just to get a sense of what's going on. And I tried colorizing all of this with the sulfur data off the little guy, but it was a bit of a mismatch. It kind of worked, kind of didn't. I will say that the resolution I was managing to get on, I think it's 6 hours again, was quite fine. Like there's all kinds of little stuff up here that was popping up.
Yeah, that's really
So,
good.
Yeah.
should be exciting. I don't think I'll get to use it again for a few more weeks, but I was very happy that after months and months of waiting, it did not result in my discovering that somebody had kicked it during shipping and the entire thing was misaligned, which I was not just a little bit worried about after it sat in a box since December.
Oh, that's, you mean kicked at your house or kicked in shipping?
In shipping.
I've
Like,
never had an issue with that with shipping.
okay. I unfortunately have.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna run piggyback. I'll probably do side by side and then just throw the ASCAR alongside it instead of the 90 mil. And then the plan will be to just shoot luminance off the tack on the old SBIG. I know. I just showed you how wide the corrected field is, and I'm gonna throw micro four thirds on it. But then I can use the RA on the ASCAR and colorize from that. So it should work out. It's a pretty good pairing.
Nice.
Good.
But I finally got something. It's been a year for new images, but I got a
Yeah, it
couple.
has been a while. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Which galaxy? There was a galaxy that you showed as you were zooming in and out on some of that that had some really nice detail on it.
It's the field is M95, M96, M105, and then a few NGCs. Two
Okay.
NGCs are right near M105.
hmm
And then I don't know what the background ones are. I mean, I did a plate solve on PixInsight, but it was essentially useless because there is so much stuff in the background that you couldn't really read what it was picking up.
Okay.
But a bunch of PGC stuff. I'd say that I I always try and go and look at the catalogs to figure out how deep something's going. I didn't get a chance to measure, but like it's deep, but it's not that crazy deep. Like nothing like what you did with that Virgo cluster image, which is probably at or about 25th meg. This wouldn't be anything approaching that. It's just the light's going where it's supposed to, which makes it pretty easy to data to work from.
Yeah.
Was my general finding with it. It's lovely.
Great. Is Ken still with us?
I think he
I
dropped too.
well, there's iPhone 6, but I think he's out doing imaging stuff, so he's
Oh, okay.
probably just left his phone in the van or something. I don't know.
I will say that with the latest round of tariffs, I just looked it up because somebody asked what the difference between that and a kind of general market scope was. And it's down to the point where I think I paid about the same amount as you have to pay now for a William Optics with a feather touch focuser for the 132. With the sale on last fall, that's what I paid. So it was not too
What
too
size
bad.
did you get?
130
Oh, perfect.
And what brand was it?
Takahashi.
Oh, it's a Takahashi. Nice.
But I don't like the Astronomy Plus guy said that he'd only seen one sale in the last 20 years and couldn't remember it being 25%. So I think it was just timing of them clearing out stock before market uncertainty came in.
Nice.
Anyway, it'll be good to use.
Yeah. Nice to use a nice piece of equipment.
hmm
Okay. Oh,
No, that's good. That's
well, we'll call it a wrap, shall we?
okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Talk to you
Have a
next
good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Do some
Nice
good
to meet you,
imaging.
Megan.
See ya.
Bye.